Ladies and gentlemen, we have to talk about Nepal. And it's been a minute, okay? There's been so much chaos and war and destruction in the world. I wanted to give a semi-good news story. This is actually surprising me. Every step of this story surprised me. And we covered it a few months back, and I want to catch you back up. So Nepal, country, sandwich here between India and China. Small country, relatively poor. A few months back, we covered this, the first Discord election and the Gen Z revolution. Maybe you remember it. Maybe you remember these videos. If not, I will give you a quick primer. Nepal is a country that has this massive population bump of young people, okay? There's a ton of young people in Nepal, and yet they're only governed by the very old. 40% of Nepal's 30 million people are under 35, yet the leadership has remained in its 70s. Couldn't be us though, right? Does not sound familiar. Can't relate. Anyway, they have, again, all the political parties have very, very old leadership. And not only old, but corrupt and entrenched. And so, a few months back, this hashtag Nepo kids started trending in Nepal, where people pointed out that the only young people in the country that were doing well were wealthy, connected Nepo kids that were isolated with the political elite of the country. So they started pointing out that these people are living lavish lifestyles. They're getting political connections. And people started speaking out against corruption. The response from the government, what do you think it was? I don't know if you remember. They obviously said, okay, your concerns are real. I'm going to take it seriously. No, they banned social media. Their response was to ban social media and try to prevent anyone from talking about the Nepo kids. Obviously, that made everybody fucking angry. So in Nepal, they organized primarily through Discord and using VPNs to use social media, and they took to the streets. And then they joined this global movement of Gen Z that have been causing revolutions all over the globe. And they started waving the one piece flag. They marched up to parliament and they burned it down. Again, they were sick and tired. They were fed up. They've had 14 different governments in 17 years. And so finally they just burned the building down and said, hey, we need something different. By the way, I think 17 people were shot. 17 protesters were shot by the administration. So, and then they took a selfie. They stood in front of the burning building, took a selfie, and that was step one. Now that step one has happened in a lot of countries. But what was interesting about Nepal is all the steps that happened afterwards. Those are what kind of shocked me because they're anomalous in human history to have gone as well as they've done. So after step one, we covered a little bit of step two. Step two was, hey, what do we do now? The leader has fled. Parliament is burning. What is our goal? And so they all got on Discord. They all got on Discord. I'm in this Discord group, by the way. And they got into these calls and they had speakers and they talked. And then eventually they voted. They had a Discord poll. And that is how they picked who would be the interim leader of the country. Not the permanent new leader, just an interim leader to help calm things down and run real elections. So they voted, again, a crazy thing again. They didn't pick like, I don't know, a random meme. They didn't pick somebody who's just Gen Z for the meme of it. They picked an elderly grandma, Shushila Karki, who is known for being deeply against corruption and gave her one goal. They said, don't run the country. Don't do anything else. Here's your mandate. Give us free and fair elections in 6 months. And then she did it, okay? That is crazy. So that's the step two. That's sort of what we covered last time, but the elections hadn't happened yet. Step three is right now, is the past few days, because those elections, it's been 6 months, are finally happening. But the hard part would be, okay, you have elections. Now you have to have a real policy and platform, and someone has to come in and change things. Otherwise, the old parties will just win again. Enter Balen Shah, a rapper. Now just remember, he's a conscious rapper who raps about corruption in his country. The corruption that robs his country. Formerly. First, he was a rapper. Then he was a civil engineer. And then, a few years back, he became mayor at age 35, age 31, I'm sorry, of Kathmandu, the biggest city in Nepal. Okay? So he went from rapper to real politician rather quickly. And he's young, he understands the mood of the country, and he offered an alternative solution to Nepal's problems. And on this video, I pulled this video of him rapping again. A month ago, before the elections, the top comment was this: our next prime minister crying laughing hard. Okay? They believe in him. They think this guy could be the next prime minister. But, I mean, to win an election is not easy. You have no established political party or clout compared to the entrenched parties. And Gen Z notoriously does not vote at the rates that elder populations do. That's why they often get screwed in votes. And so there was this big, in the past few months, this massive coordinated movement to get Gen Z youth and millennials, but younger people in Nepal to register to vote. And they had this coordinated social media campaign. Last chance. If you care, register. If you're frustrated, register. If you want change, register. Register to vote. 40 hours left. This, by the way, applies to fucking the country I live in. A reminder, register to vote. It is important. It does matter. Voter turnout does make a difference. Anyway, they run this campaign. It's a huge social media campaign. And this is another thing that's different about Nepal, because this has not happened in other Gen Z movements. This is a big coordinated push. And they got 800,000 new young people to sign up to vote. Massive. They had 129 new political parties register, promising different issues they focused on. Massive. A huge use of the actual levers of democracy to make change. Pretty incredible. And at the same time, Balen Shah had this quote about, like, dude, it's so badass. It was like, if you want to take down a king, you have to go to his castle. So he, of all the districts you could run in, runs in the district of the former prime minister who hasn't lost in 18 years. His party hasn't lost. So he's running against him in Joppa 5, which is this part of the country, and he starts going for him in his district. A crazy election. Now, what happened though? Because this is the setup. I want to tell you how it could go wrong. So if there's all these Gen Z revolutions around the world, remember this map that I showed you? Again, there's even more than this. It's been happening. It was the story of 24 and 25 with these Gen Z revolutions. And now the story of 26 is like, what happens next? What's the aftermath? If Nepal so far is an S tier, well, then I would give a B tier to like Bangladesh. It was one of the first Gen Z revolutions. They waved the flags. They took over parliament. They talked about Luffy. They did all the first parts right. They checked all the boxes, right? But then the next part, where you organize and you build parties and you get youth registration, they didn't do that. And so when the election finally happened, which they did get fair elections, they got crushed. I'm sorry, you can't see. They got crushed at the ballot box. And so instead of winning a bunch of seats, they won 6. They won 6 seats out of 300, and they didn't get the political power. So instead, the country that already ruled the country, the party that already ruled the country, stayed in power. And so they didn't get the real change they wanted. They sent a message, and things are slightly different, but it wasn't a sustained movement. So that's what could happen, right? So, but go back to Joppa 5. What did happen here in Nepal after all the different effort they put in? Well, it turns out it was a bloodbath. He won 4-1. He crushed him on his home turf. And then all over the country, traditional party leaders suffered heavy losses. The 2 established parties in the country lost in all these different regions all over Nepal. It was a massive, massive sea change. They called it a political earthquake. All these traditional strongholds got destroyed. He said Nepal's history was made. A candidate promising a new future defeated one representing the old failed ways. He even mogged him. Here's like a changing of the guard. I don't know, he's passing him something. He mogged him. He had to congratulate him on social media. Look at the aura, dude. Holy fucking shit. Democracy maxing. And he was able to win. And not only did he personally win and become prime minister, But his party, the RSP, which had not been a major party prior to this, swept the elections nationwide and suddenly became a majority of the parliament. I think possibly, this is an earlier graph, it might be at a supermajority now. It might be an actual supermajority, which means they have over 2/3, they can do whatever they want. But at the very least, they're very close, and they outnumber all the opposition combined, which means not only is there a new leader in charge, but he can actually get shit passed. It's an actual, I think they're 1 seat shy of a 2/3 majority, but still they have to just get one person to flip to get anything passed. So the combination of this effective voting movement, a compelling social media platform, and I think a deep message of like anti-corruption did make a difference, even in a poor country like Nepal that has had history of corruption and scandal and rule change going back 18 years. So more than that, decades, but so it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. And I want to say it's rare. So if we go back to this tier list of the B and S tier, you might be asking, well, what's the F or what's the D? What's the worst example so far? Because when we first talked about this, I remember being absolutely shocked that the revolution had gone as well as it did. They got free and fair elections. They transitioned power peacefully. And the truth is that historically, examples like this are rare. And one that happened recently is Madagascar. Madagascar had a Gen Z revolution that went more like what you'd expect from history. They had the flags. They had the parliament burning. They had Luffy. Okay? They had all that part. But then, right when they were like outside the gates of parliament and trying to figure out how they were going to take down the leader, they got help from an outside source. The CapSat elite military unit switched sides. It defected from the regime and joined the protesters. And they were like, yes, this is fucking awesome. They joined us. And now we can take down the leadership. And they did. And the leadership fled the country. But then the CapSat elite unit said, well, now nobody's going to stop us. And they seized power. And that's what happens over and over and over throughout history. I can't stress enough how crazy it is that Nepal had this peaceful, orderly transition of power. And it comes down to, well, let me explain a little bit more what happened here in Madagascar. They're calling it a coup-volution. It was a revolution/coup. Following a familiar pattern, Gen Z protesters now have buyer's remorse because the government they hated has been replaced by a military dictatorship that's even worse. And the military dictatorship today just dissolved parliament and the cabinet. This is happening right now. This guy has now seized total control of Madagascar on the backs of the Gen Z protest movement, but turning into something else. So this is the bad way it can go. And that's why I want to stop. And again, for the third video about Nepal, give an incredible debt of, gratitude of being impressed with the Nepalese army, the Gurkhas. It's incredible. What they did was so patriotic. Like during the protest, did not take a side, just kept and maintained order, and then helped transition the power to the new people that the Discord chose, and did not attempt to seize power for themselves at all. It's truly impressive. And so the last thing I want to say is, so I tried to look up Balen Shah's, this guy, the new PM's history to see, is this guy going to be a good leader? Because, maybe how he worked as mayor can give me a clue. And the truth is, when he was mayor, he was not like phenomenally successful. It's a difficult challenge. Kathmandu was a tough city. He was a young guy, first job. But here's one thing that even his critics agreed upon, okay? He didn't magically make the city better. The thing they agreed upon was that he is not corrupt. He is completely corruption-free. So I think what this election is proving to me and what people want more than anything, I think it's like, if you're tier listing what you want in a candidate, it's almost number one nowadays, is corruption-free. Because then you at least know that they're not serving someone else's ulterior interests. They're trying. It's a difficult task. They may not succeed, but they're trying. So again, I'm not going to tell you. I've looked at enough human history to know things can go bad. But so far, Nepal has surprised me again and again and again, and it's worth celebrating how impressive it is what they've done so far. This is really cool. And so that's my update on Nepal. that elections just happened. People are ringing bells in the streets. That's their RSP's like symbol or whatever. So everybody's ringing bells. It's a very euphoric moment right now, but we'll see where it goes from here. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that update. I'll obviously follow us up again in a few months and see how it's going. I'm sure there'll be challenges, but this is cool so far.